Lovie Smith has been fired after one season as the head coach of the Houston Texans, leading them to a 3-13-1 record. I really can't believe that there are some people out there who are defending Lovie Smith, saying that he deserved a second year. If you watched any Texans game this season, you would agree that Lovie Smith, he had to go. And listen, Lovie Smith is a great person. He's a fantastic leader. But I think the game has passed them by. And I honestly don't know why the Houston Texans even decided to hire Lovie Smith. They might as well have just kept David Culley. People say, well, JT, Lovie Smith didn't have great personnel. Okay, neither did David Culley. And the Texans look like a better team under him with a worse roster than they did this season with Lovie Smith with a better roster than what they had in 2021. Not to mention, look at Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll would have loved to have a Jalen Petrie or Derek Stingley or Brandon Cooks at receiver. Hell, they could have used Brandon Cooks for sure. So it's like, even though the Texans didn't have a great roster, Lovie Smith and his coaching staff could have been way better. And let's be honest, bruh. Many Texans fans probably weren't expecting anything out of Lovie Smith. You kind of wonder, if the Texans just hired Lovie Smith because they knew he wasn't going to be a good coach and he was going to put them in position to get the number 1 overall pick, which they failed to do. But I'm not mad at him for not being able to do that because, as a coach, I don't really think that's a great accomplishment, helping a team get the number 1 overall selection or tanking. I think that's actually a blemish if we're being honest. And you got to think, these players, bruh, they're playing to stay on the roster. They're playing to get opportunities elsewhere. Nobody just wants to lose on purpose. These players got pride. They don't give a damn about getting Bryce Young and stuff like that. Some of them got some pride. So you can't hold that against the coach. You look at the Houston Texans, the decision to hire Lovie Smith was just one of those WTF moments. You might as well have just kept David Culley. I don't know what Lovie Smith said during the job interview that landed him this coaching gig with the Houston Texans. But, if they looked at his resume outside of his stint with the Chicago Bears, he hasn't won anything at his other 10 years. He didn't win at Tampa Bay. He didn't win when he was coaching college ball at Illinois. I know somebody who actually was playing under Lovie Smith. He said he was a great leader, great person and stuff. You get what I'm saying? But as a coach, he didn't really put a lot of emphasis on development. So it's like Lovie Smith is a solid coach to have on your staff. Maybe if you still want to have him as a D coordinator, maybe, or like an assistant. But as far as head coach material, bruh, they had to get him out. I'm sorry. And even if you want to use the personnel thing, it's like you mismanaged it. There's no reason why you should be benching Davis Mills at any point of the season. You get what I'm saying? It's like, bruh, it's like he's a young quarterback. If you legitimately are trying to see what you have in him, you got to let him play out the rough patches. And you were not in position to make the playoffs. You were far from eliminated from playoff contention by then. So it's like, what the hell was the reason for benching Davis Mills? It was random as hell. Just like this hiring. Random as hell. Now, their GM, there's some rumors out there that he could be on the chopping block, but I kind of would be a little bit upset with that move. I think he's done a really good job of drafting. Their last year's draft class was phenomenal. Dameon Pierce, I had him on my fantasy squad. If you guys been sub to the podcast for over a year, you guys probably remember that segment we did back in around early June, talking about why Dameon Pierce could end up being one of the best rookie running backs. had him, Kenneth Walker, Brees Hall. I mean, it's some dogs on this team. Jalen Petrie. So, I mean, there's some talent on this Houston Texans squad. This just wasn't a terrible squad. They had probably some of the best rookies in the NFL all on this team. There's a couple of guys who I can't think of. They had a linebacker. I think he played for Bama. I can't think of his name. But, I mean, there's some really good young pieces on this Texans team. This isn't just an undesirable job that doesn't have, no pieces at all. They just got to completely rebuild the roster. Like, this roster is coming up. And in the AFC South, there's not really anybody who has a complete grasp on the division. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, yeah, they got Trevor Lawrence who's on the rise. But, I mean, they still don't have a great roster that's been constructed. They still have holes that they need to address. You look at Tennessee, their offense, their offensive line, their quarterback position, you have questions about it in the future. So, for the Houston Texans, they get the right head coach. They could get their franchise QB. I think C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young would be fine. If you can't get Bryce Young, cool. You get C.J. Stroud. I think that works too. All you got to do now is improve your offensive line and free agency and the draft. You did a pretty good job so far in the draft last year, so hopefully you can keep up that level of consistency. But Lovie Smith is out. That's the head coach of the Houston Texans.